This 4-year-old homeless girl finds a millionaire with a baby trapped on the train tracks. But she saw everything and does something that shocks everyone. Comment saying what you thought of this story, giving it a rating from 0 to 10. I really want to know if you liked my story. And subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The rain fell hard on the streets of Oakhaven that cold December morning, turning the city's grime into a slick mud that clung to Lily Fortune's bare feet. The 4-year-old girl huddled under the broken awning of the old train station, her big, clever eyes watching every movement on the empty street. Her stomach had been rumbling for 2 hours, a reminder that she hadn't eaten since the stale bread she'd found in the market's trash the day before. Lily knew this routine well, waking up when the first rays of sun touched her face, looking for a dry place to spend the night, and most importantly, finding food before the hunger became unbearable. Her brown hair was matted by the rain and wind, and her torn clothes, a faded pink t-shirt and a denim skirt that had once belonged to another child, barely protected her from the biting cold that cut through her skin. The sound of a car breaking the morning silence made her shrink further against the brick wall. A gleaming black Mercedes pulled up near the abandoned train tracks, a stark contrast to the decaying landscape of the station that hadn't seen a train in over 10 years. Lily frowned, curious. Nice cars like that never came to this forgotten part of town. A tall, well-dressed man got out of the vehicle, wearing a dark suit that looked expensive even to the inexperienced eyes of a street child. Arthur Cavanaugh was 52 years old, with carefully combed grey hair and an expression on his face that Lily couldn't quite understand. It seemed like a mixture of desperation and determination that made her uneasy. What caught the girl's attention most was what the man was carrying in his arms, a baby wrapped in a light blue blanket. The child looked to be only a few months old and was crying softly, a sound that blended with the drumming of the rain on the station's zinc roof. Arthur looked around nervously, as if making sure no one was watching him. Lily instinctively hid better behind a cracked concrete column, her heart beating faster. Something strange was happening here. Something her childlike survival instinct told her wasn't normal. The businessman walked toward the rusty tracks with hesitant steps. His hands were visibly trembling as he held the baby, and Lily could see tears streaming down his face, mixing with the raindrops. It was as if every step toward the tracks cost him all his willpower. When Arthur knelt and carefully placed the baby on the cold iron rails, Lily felt something tighten in her chest. Even as a child who had grown up on the streets, she knew this was terribly wrong. The baby continued to cry, now louder, as if sensing the imminent danger. The man remained kneeling for a few seconds that felt like an eternity, his hands covering his face as his shoulders shook with restrained sobs. Then suddenly he got up and ran back to the car without looking back. The Mercedes sped away, leaving behind only the sound of the engine fading and the baby's desperate cries. Lily was paralyzed for a moment, her small brain trying to process what she had just witnessed. Logic said that a well-dressed adult like that man should know better than her what to do. But something deep in her childish heart screamed that the baby was in danger. It was then that she heard it, the unmistakable sound of an approaching train in the distance, coming from the main line that still operated and crossed the abandoned tracks exactly where the baby had been left. The metallic noise of the wheels on the rails echoed louder and louder, mixing with the child's cries. Without a second thought, Lily ran out from her hiding place and sprinted toward the tracks. Her bare feet slipped in the mud, but she kept running, driven by a protective instinct she didn't know she possessed. The train was getting closer, and she could feel the ground vibrating beneath her feet. Reaching the tracks, she picked up the baby with the surprising gentleness of someone who had already cared for other abandoned children on the streets. The little one was heavier than she expected, but she managed to carry him away from the tracks just seconds before the train rushed past like a noisy blur, kicking up a cloud of dust and debris. Panting and trembling, Lily took shelter again under the awning, cradling the baby against her chest. It was then that she noticed something tucked into the child's clothes, a folded and sealed piece of paper, protected from the rain by being between the layers of the blanket. Unable to read, she carefully tucked the paper into the pocket of her skirt. She knew that Dolores Sanchez, the kind woman who worked as a cleaner at the municipal hospital and always gave her leftover food, could help her understand what was written there. The baby had stopped crying and was now looking at her with big, curious eyes, as if he knew she had saved his life. Lily smiled for the first time that day, feeling a strange and comforting sense of responsibility. Without knowing it, she had just become part of a story that would forever change not only her life, but the lives of many others. Dolores Sanchez was finishing cleaning the pediatric ward corridor at the municipal hospital when she saw Lily appear at the main entrance, carrying something in her arms. The 58-year-old woman knew the girl well. For the past 2 years, she had become almost a surrogate mother to the little one, offering her food and affection whenever possible. "Lily, my dear, what are you doing here so early?" Dolores asked, dropping the bucket of dirty water and approaching. It was then that she noticed the baby in the girl's arms. Her eyes widened with surprise and concern. Where did this child come from? Lily looked at Dolores with that serious expression that made her seem older than she really was. "Miss Dolores, a man in nice clothes left him on the train tracks. The train was going to run him over." The girl spoke with the direct simplicity of children, but her words made Dolores's heart race. "What do you mean, my dear? Tell your auntie exactly what happened." Dolores guided Lily to a chair in the hospital lobby, her hands trembling slightly as she looked at the baby. The child was clearly well cared for. His clothes were good quality. He was clean and well fed. Lily told the whole story, from the moment she saw the black Mercedes to the rescue of the baby from the tracks. As she spoke, she took the crumpled paper from her skirt pocket. "This was stuck to his clothes. Can you read it for me?" Dolores carefully took the paper, unfolding it slowly. It was a handwritten letter, and as she began to read, her face grew progressively paler. The words were written in a hurry, but they were clear enough to reveal a desperate situation. "My God," she whispered, covering her mouth with one hand. The letter said, "Please, take care of Leo. I can't protect him. Quentin is forcing me to do this, or he will destroy everything. Leo is my only true son. If anything happens to me, look for Dolores Sanchez at the municipal hospital." She knew his mother, Arthur Cavanaugh. "What does it say, Auntie?" Lily asked, gently rocking the baby who had started to cry again. Dolores was silent for a moment, processing the information. Arthur Cavanaugh was known throughout Oakhaven as a successful and generous businessman, owner of Cavanaugh Construction Supplies. 3 days ago, all the local papers had reported the disappearance of his baby son, and the police were still investigating. But what shocked her most was the mention of her own name in the letter. How did Arthur know who she was? And what did he mean by, "she knew his mother"? "Lily, my dear, we need to take this baby somewhere safe while I think about what to do," Dolores said, trying to keep her voice calm so as not to frighten the girl. "You did the right thing by saving him." At that moment, one of the pediatric nurses, a young brunette with kind eyes, approached them. "Dolores, is everything all right? I heard a baby crying." "Jocelyn, thank you for coming," Dolores said, relieved to see the 28-year-old nurse who had become her close friend. "We have a delicate situation here." Jocelyn Myers was known at the hospital for her competence and special affection for children. When she saw the baby in Lily's arms, her maternal instincts immediately kicked in. "He looks to be a few months old. He's well fed and cared for. Where did he come from?" Dolores hesitated, looking around to make sure no one else was nearby. "It's a long story, dear. Can you help us examine him discreetly? I want to make sure he's healthy." "Of course, let's go to one of the empty exam rooms," Jocelyn agreed, without asking any more questions. It was typical of her to help first and ask questions later. As they walked through the hospital corridors, Lily observed everything around her with curiosity. It was the first time she had been inside such a clean and organized place. The white tiles on the walls shone, and there was a smell of disinfectant that was both strong and comforting. In the exam room, Jocelyn carefully examined the baby while Dolores held Lily in her lap. "He's in perfect health," the nurse announced. "Well-nourished, no signs of abuse. Based on his developmental signs, I'd say he's about 3 months old. But there's something interesting here." "What is it?" Dolores asked, tense. "This birthmark on his left shoulder," Jocelyn said, pointing to a small crescent moon-shaped mark on the baby's skin. "It's very distinctive. If you report the finding, this would be an important identifying feature." Dolores felt a chill. That mark was strangely familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had seen it before. It was as if an old memory was trying to surface but remained just out of her reach. "Auntie Dolores, can I keep Leo?" Lily asked suddenly. using the name she had heard from the letter. "I know how to take care of babies. I've taken care of others on the streets." Dolores's heart broke hearing those words. A 4-year-old girl shouldn't have experience caring for abandoned babies, but the reality of Oakhaven streets was cruel and unforgiving. "My dear, we'll take care of him together," Dolores promised. "But first, I need to find out some important things." Jocelyn noticed the tension in the air. "Dolores, if you need help with anything, you can count on me. And if necessary, I can arrange a safe place for the child for a few days." It was at that moment that Dolores's cell phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize, but something made her answer. "Hello? Dolores Sanchez?" The voice on the other end was male, tense and desperate. "Yes, who's speaking?" "It's Arthur Kavanaugh. I need to speak with you urgently. It's about my son, Leo." Dolores looked at Lily, who was holding the baby carefully, and then at Jocelyn, who was watching the conversation with growing curiosity. "Mr. Kavanaugh, where are you?" "In my office. Please, I know this might seem strange, but you're the only person I can trust right now. My life and my son's life are in danger." The man's voice was broken, filled with an anguish that reminded Dolores of her own pain when she had lost her husband years ago. It was the sound of someone who had lost everything and was clinging to the last thread of hope. "Your son is safe," she said carefully, "but I need to understand what's happening before I do anything." "Did you read the letter? Then you know I'm being blackmailed. Quentin discovered something about my company and is forcing me to do terrible things. He said if I didn't hand over Leo, he would destroy not only my life, but also hurt innocent people." Dolores closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the situation on her shoulders. "Who is Quentin?" "My partner, Quentin Myers. He's not the man everyone thinks he is." Jocelyn, who had been listening to the conversation, turned pale upon hearing that name. Her hands began to tremble, and she had to lean on the exam table. "Myers said you knew Carmen, Leo's mother," Arthur continued. "He said you would know why Leo is in danger." At that moment, all the pieces began to fall into place in Dolores's mind, and the memory that had been trying to emerge finally came to the surface with devastating force. She knew Quentin Myers very well, and what she knew about him made her blood run cold. Jocelyn felt her legs weaken upon hearing the name Quentin Myers. She leaned on the exam table, trying to control her breathing, which had become ragged and shallow. That name had haunted her nightmares for years, a ghost from the past she thought she had left behind. "Dolores," she whispered in a trembling voice, "did you say Quentin Myers?" Dolores was still on the phone with Arthur, but she noticed Jocelyn's altered state. She covered the phone with her hand and looked at the young nurse with concern. "Do you know this man, dear?" He's my father," Jocelyn said, the words coming out as a painful whisper. "The father who abandoned me when I was 5 and never wanted to see me again." The silence that followed was heavy and charged with tension. Lily, still holding baby Leo, looked between the two adult women without fully understanding what was happening, but feeling the anguish that filled the room. Dolores quickly returned to the phone. "Mr. Kavanaugh, I need to hang up now, but I'll come see you in an hour. Stay in your office and don't trust anyone else." She hung up without waiting for a response and turned completely to Jocelyn. "My dear, I need you to tell me everything about your father. Everything." Jocelyn sat down heavily in a chair, the painful memories flooding back. "Quentin was always a greedy and manipulative man. When I was a child, he had small businesses that always seemed to involve shady things. My mother lived in fear of him, always whispering on the phone, always worried about money." "And why did he leave?" Dolores asked gently, sitting beside her. "One day he just vanished. He took all the family's savings and disappeared. He left a letter saying he'd found a golden opportunity in another city and would come back when he was rich. That was 23 years ago. We never heard from him again." Lily, who had been listening in silence, approached Jocelyn. "Auntie Jocelyn, you're sad. Do you want to hold the baby? He always makes me feel better." The girl's simplicity and kindness deeply touched Jocelyn. She accepted Leo into her arms and immediately felt a strange sense of connection to the child. The baby stopped fussing and looked at her with his big, curious eyes, as if recognizing something familiar in her. "Dolores," Jocelyn said after a few moments, "there's something else you need to know. My mother told me before she died that my father was obsessed with getting back what was his. He always said someone had stolen something very valuable from him years ago and that one day he would get his revenge. Do you have any idea what it could be? I'm not sure, but Jocelyn hesitated, looking at Leo in her arms. My mother once mentioned that before he had me, my father had dated a woman named Carmen. She said the breakup had been very ugly, full of accusations and resentment. Dolores felt a shiver run down her spine. Carmen, the name Arthur mentioned. Leo's mother. It's possible, Jocelyn agreed, her voice gaining a new urgency. If my father is blackmailing Arthur over the son he had with Carmen, it would explain a lot about his vengeful personality. It was at that moment that Lily, who had been watching the two women intently, asked a question that changed everything. Auntie Dolores, if the bad man wants to hurt Leo, shouldn't we hide him somewhere the bad man doesn't know? The 4-year-old's insight surprised both women. She was right. Keeping Leo in the hospital, where Quentin could easily look, was dangerous. You're right, my little one, Dolores said, standing up with determination. Jocelyn, can you take Leo to your house for a few days? In the meantime, I'll talk to Arthur and try to understand this whole situation. Of course. But what if my father shows up there? He might know where I live. Then let's go to my house, Dolores decided. It's a place he doesn't know, and I have neighbors who can help if we need them. As they organized the details of the plan, none of them noticed the figure watching from the hallway window. A middle-aged man, well-dressed but with a dark expression on his face, had arrived at the hospital asking questions about an elderly cleaning lady and a street girl who often shows up here. Quentin Myers had discovered where Leo was. An hour later, Dolores arrived at Arthur Kavanaugh's office. The Kavanaugh Construction Supplies building was imposing, located in Oak Haven's commercial center. But when she entered, she immediately noticed something was wrong. The employees seemed tense, whispering among themselves, and there was a palpable climate of fear in the air. Arthur received her in his private office. The man she found was visibly shaken, disheveled hair, deep dark circles under his eyes, hands that trembled slightly as he tried to pour coffee. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice filled with gratitude and desperation. "Did you really find my son?" "Yes, and he's safe for now, but I need to understand what's happening here before I make any decisions." Arthur sank heavily into his chair. "Quentin found out that my wife, Audrey, has a gambling problem. She racked up huge debts in online casinos, almost $100,000. To cover those debts and prevent her from being threatened by loan sharks, I started transferring money from the company to personal accounts. And Quentin found out?" "Yes. But the worst part is, he doesn't just want to expose me. He wants me to hand over Leo as collateral to ensure I'll keep doing what he says. He said if I don't cooperate, he'll make something happen to my son." Dolores felt anger rise in her chest. "Why Leo specifically? Why not just blackmail you with the financial information?" "Because Leo is not Audrey's son," Arthur revealed, his words falling like bombs in the silence of the room. "He is Carmen's son, a woman I loved deeply who died in childbirth. Audrey always rejected Leo, and Quentin knows this. He knows she wouldn't lift a finger to protect him." "And where is Audrey now?" "In a rehab clinic in Cleveland. I put her there last week when I discovered the extent of her problems. She even suggested I get rid of Leo to solve our financial problems." The coldness of that revelation made Dolores realize the situation was even more complex than she had imagined. Leo wasn't just being used as a bargaining chip by Quentin. He was also rejected by the only mother figure he knew. "Arthur," she said carefully, "Quentin mentioned that I knew Carmen. It's true." The businessman's eyes widened. "You knew her?" "Carmen worked as a nursing assistant at the hospital a few years ago. She was a sweet girl, always spoke of you with great affection. But she also mentioned an ex-boyfriend who was stalking her, who wouldn't accept the end of the relationship." "Quentin," Arthur murmured, the pieces fitting together in his mind. "Exactly. Carmen was afraid of him. She told me he had threatened to destroy any chance of happiness she might have with someone else. When she died in childbirth, I always wondered if he had something to do with it," Arthur completed, his voice filled with horror. At that moment, Arthur's phone rang. It was an unknown number, but when he answered, the voice he heard made his blood run cold. "Hello, Arthur. I heard you've been visiting some interesting places today. I hope you're not doing anything stupid." It was Quentin, and from the tone of his voice, he knew exactly where Leo was hidden. Quentin's voice over the phone was cold and calculating, carrying a veiled threat that made Arthur clench his fist around the device. "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Oh, you don't? How interesting, because I just received a very enlightening call from an acquaintance of mine who works at the hospital. It seems a certain cleaning lady and a nurse are taking care of something that belongs to me." Dolores saw Arthur's face pale and immediately understood that Quentin had discovered where Leo was. She took out her cell phone and sent an urgent message to Jocelyn. "Leave my house now. Take the kids to Mrs. Gable's house, my neighbor. He knows. Quentin, Leo is my son, not yours," Arthur said, struggling to maintain some control of the situation. "Your son?" The laugh that came from the other end of the line was bitter and full of resentment. "The son of the woman who should have been mine? The baby who exists because Carmen rejected me for you? No, Arthur. That boy represents everything that was taken from me, and now he will serve to get back what is mine by right. What do you want then? Money. I can give you money. It's not just about money, my dear partner. It's about justice. You have 1 hour to show up at the warehouse on Industrial Street with $10,000 in cash, alone. If you bring anyone or try anything clever, the people who are taking care of what's mine will have problems. Serious problems." The call ended abruptly, leaving Arthur and Dolores in a tense silence. The office seemed to have grown colder, and the hum of the air conditioner was the only sound breaking the heavy atmosphere. "He's bluffing," Dolores said, but her own voice betrayed the uncertainty she felt. "He's not," Arthur replied grimly. "Quentin has contacts all over the city. People who owe him favors, people he has bought or intimidated over the years. If he said he'll hurt you, he will." At that moment, Dolores's phone vibrated with a reply from Jocelyn. "We're out. We're at Mrs. Gable's with the kids. Lily noticed a man watching your house from the back street." Dolores showed the message to Arthur, who closed his eyes in momentary relief. At least they're safe for now. "Arthur, I need to tell you something important about Carmen," Dolores said, deciding it was time to reveal the whole truth. "Before she died, Carmen came to me at the hospital. She was terrified. Said Quentin had made specific threats against the baby she was expecting." "What kind of threats?" "He said that if he couldn't have Carmen, he would at least make sure that your son would never know his father. She interpreted it as a kidnapping threat, but I always wondered if it was something worse." Arthur stood up abruptly and began to pace the room. "Why didn't you ever tell me this before?" "Because Carmen made me promise I would only tell if something happened to her or the baby. And when she died in childbirth, I thought Quentin's threats had died with her. I never imagined he would wait 5 years to act. He was waiting for the right moment," Arthur realized. "Waiting until I was vulnerable, with financial and family problems. Quentin was always patient when it came to revenge." On the other side of town, at the home of Mrs. Gable, a 70-year-old woman who lived next door to Dolores, Jocelyn tried to stay calm while Leo cried in Lily's arms. The 4-year-old girl had become surprisingly protective of the baby, refusing to let anyone but Jocelyn hold him. "Auntie Jocelyn, is the bad man going to try to get Leo?" Lily asked, her big eyes reflecting a worry that was too heavy for a child her age. "We're not going to let that happen, my dear," Jocelyn replied, trying to sound more confident than she really felt. "Auntie Dolores and Leo's daddy are sorting everything out." Mrs. Gable, a small but determined woman, had closed all the curtains in the house and locked all the doors. "Girls, you can stay here as long as you need. I have enough food and a place for everyone to sleep." It was then that Leo suddenly stopped crying and smiled at Lily. It was the first time the baby had shown such a positive reaction, and something in that smile deeply touched Jocelyn's heart. It was as if the child knew that Lily had saved his life and had formed a special bond with her. "Look, Auntie Jocelyn," Lily whispered, amazed. "He's smiling at me. I think he knows we're friends." Meanwhile, back at the office, Arthur had made a decision that would change the course of everything. "Dolores, I'm going to meet Quentin at the warehouse," he announced, opening the safe he had behind his desk. "I'll take the money he wants and try to negotiate." "That's crazy. He could do anything to you there." "It's a risk I have to take. But first, I need to tell you something that might change your perspective on this whole situation." Dolores looked at him expectantly, sensing that another revelation was coming. "Quentin isn't just my partner in legal business. 5 years ago, when my company was going through financial difficulties, he proposed a special partnership, public works contracts obtained through inside information, materials sold with fake invoices, unregistered workers. Are you saying your company is a front for money laundering? In part, yes, and I was weak enough to accept because I needed the money to take care of Leo and maintain the lifestyle Audrey demanded. Now Quentin has evidence of all these crimes, and he can completely destroy me if he wants. The revelation hit Dolores like a punch to the gut. The man she was trying to help was not just an innocent victim, he was an active part of a corrupt scheme that had likely harmed many people. How many people are involved in this? She asked, her voice coming out colder than she intended. Dozens. Local politicians, public officials, other businessmen. Quentin coordinates everything, but we are all guilty. At that moment, Arthur's phone rang again. This time it was a number he recognized immediately. It was from Audrey, calling from the rehab clinic. "Arthur, my love, I need to talk to you urgently," his wife's voice said, but there was something strange in her tone, a forced urgency that didn't match her personality. "Audrey, how did you get a phone at the clinic?" "Listen, darling, Quentin came to visit me today. He told me about Leo and about the company's financial problems." Arthur felt his heart stop. "What do you mean he visited you?" "He said he has a proposal that will solve all our problems. But you need to come here now, alone. He's waiting for you here at the clinic." The call ended, and Arthur realized he had fallen into a much more elaborate trap than he had imagined. Quentin wasn't just blackmailing, he was manipulating every aspect of his life, even using his sick wife as bait. "Dolores," he said, his voice filled with a dangerous resignation, "I think Quentin never intended to make a simple exchange. He's planning something much worse." And it was at that moment that they both realized that Leo's life, and perhaps all of theirs, was in far greater danger than they had imagined. At Mrs. Gable's house, the tension grew with every minute that passed without news from Dolores. Jocelyn paced nervously around the small living room, holding Leo, while Lily remained seated on the couch, watching everything with that unsettling seriousness that street children develop too early. "Auntie Jocelyn," Lily said suddenly, "I think I saw the bad man before." Jocelyn stopped pacing immediately. "What do you mean, my dear?" "Yesterday, when I was looking for food near the town square, I saw a man in a suit talking to other men. They were talking about eliminating witnesses and about a baby." Lily's words made Jocelyn's blood run cold. If Quentin was really planning something against witnesses, it meant they were all in mortal danger. "Are you sure it was him?" Jocelyn asked, trying to keep her voice calm. "I didn't see his face clearly, but the voice was the same as the one on the phone I heard at the hospital, and he had a scar on his right hand, right here," Lily said, pointing to the space between her thumb and index finger. Mrs. Gable, who had been making tea in the kitchen, returned to the room with a worried expression. "Girls, I just saw through the kitchen window. There's a dark car parked on the corner that's been there for over an hour. The man inside is watching us." Jocelyn ran to the window and peeked through a crack in the curtain. A middle-aged man was sitting in the passenger seat of a black sedan, talking on his cell phone and looking directly at the house. When their eyes met for a brief moment, she felt a shiver of recognition. It was really Quentin. Even after 23 years, she recognized her father's cold, calculating eyes. "We need to get out of here," she said, fighting the panic that threatened to take over her mind. "Mrs. Gable, is there a back exit?" "Yes. There's a small gate that leads to the vacant lot behind the house. You can go out that way and circle the block." While they organized a discreet escape on the other side of town, Dolores and Arthur faced an impossible dilemma. The businessman had decided he could no longer run from his responsibilities. "I'm going to the clinic to meet Audrey," he announced, putting $10,000 in a backpack. "If Quentin is using my wife as bait, I need to protect her too. Arthur, that's obviously a trap. I know. But I can't abandon Audrey, even after everything she's done, and it might be the only chance to negotiate directly with Quentin. Then I'm going with you." "Absolutely not. You need to stay here and coordinate Leo's protection. If something happens to me, you'll be the only person who can take care of him." Dolores realized that Arthur had made a final decision, and that nothing she said would make him change his mind. "At least keep me informed. Call me every hour. I promise." After Arthur left, Dolores was alone in the office, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. It was then that her cell phone rang with a call from Jocelyn. "Dolores, we need to leave Mrs. Gable's house. My father is outside watching us." "My God, where are you going?" We're going to the neighborhood church. Father Michael always leaves the doors open and there are a lot of people there during the day. It will be safer. Good idea. I'll meet you there in half an hour. Meanwhile, at the rehab clinic in Cleveland, Arthur found a situation that shocked him deeply. Audrey was sitting in the visiting room, but her appearance was drastically different. She had lost a lot of weight, her hair was unkempt, and there was a look of genuine fear in her eyes. "Arthur, thank God you came," she said, getting up quickly to hug him. "Quentin was here this morning. He told me terrible things." "What kind of things?" "He said he knows about my debts, about the money you took from the company to help me. But the worst part is that he has proof that I tried to sell information about Leo to loan sharks." Arthur stepped away from her, shocked. "What do you mean, sell information?" Audrey started to cry, the words coming out between sobs. "When the debts got too high, some men came to me. They said they would pay very well for information about you and about Leo. I was desperate. You sold information about our son to criminals? I didn't actually sell it. Quentin showed up before I could do anything. He said if I cooperated with him, he would pay all my debts and protect me from the loan sharks. And you agreed? What choice did I have? The men who approached me said that if I didn't pay in a month, they would do something terrible to Leo to force me to get the money." Arthur felt as if the floor had disappeared from under his feet. Not only had he gotten involved in illegal business with Quentin, but his own wife had put Leo in danger by dealing with criminals. "Where is Quentin now?" he asked, trying to maintain some control of the situation. "He said he would be waiting in the clinic's parking lot until you arrived." "Arthur, he has guns. I saw them when he opened his coat." At that moment, a clinic employee approached them. "Mr. Kavanaugh, there's a man outside asking for you. He said he's your partner." Arthur looked out the visiting room window and saw Quentin leaning against his car, talking on the phone. Even from a distance, he could see the cruel look of satisfaction on the man's face. "Audrey, I need you to tell me exactly what Quentin said he was going to do." "He said that Leo represents justice delayed, that Carmen should have been with him, and if he couldn't have her, he would at least have what mattered most to her, her son. Does he plan to kidnap Leo? Worse than that. He said Leo will disappear in the same way Carmen disappeared from his life, and that you will watch it all as a punishment for stealing what was his." The coldness of those words made Arthur understand that Quentin had never planned a simple blackmail. He wanted to completely destroy Arthur's life, just as he felt his own life had been destroyed years ago. At that moment his phone rang. It was Quentin. "I see you've arrived for our meeting. Come down to the parking lot, alone." "Quentin, we can solve this civilly. I have the money you asked for." "Oh, my dear partner, this stopped being about money a long time ago. Now it's about settling scores. You have 2 minutes to come down or I'll go get Leo myself. And when I say get, I mean I'll make your life a living hell until I get what I want." The call ended, and Arthur realized he was about to face a man who had completely lost his sanity, consumed by years of resentment and thirst for revenge. When he went down to the parking lot, Quentin was waiting for him with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Finally, Arthur, let's take a ride and talk about little Leo's future." At St. Sebastian's Church, in the neighborhood where Dolores lived, Jocelyn took refuge with Lily and Leo in the front pews, near the altar. The sacred environment offered a temporary sense of protection, but she knew that Quentin would not hesitate to desecrate even a holy place if necessary to get what he wanted. Leo had fallen asleep in Lily's arms, who was humming a soft melody she had learned from hearing other street children. It was amazing how the 4-year-old girl had developed such a strong maternal instinct for the baby. "Auntie Jocelyn," Lily whispered, "why is your daddy so mean?" The simple question carried a weight that made Jocelyn fight back tears. "Sometimes people get so much hate in their hearts that they forget how to love, my dear. But you're not like that. You're good. It's because I chose to be different from him." Father Michael, a kind 60-year-old man who knew the difficult situation of the families in the neighborhood well, approached them. "Jocelyn, are you in trouble? I saw you came in here looking rather scared." "Father, there's a dangerous man after us. I need to protect these children. You can stay here as long as you need, and if you want, I can get some help from a few parishioners. We have good men in the community who wouldn't hesitate to protect defenseless children." Meanwhile, in the clinic's parking lot, Arthur got into Quentin's car with his heart pounding. The interior of the vehicle smelled of cigarettes, and there was a heavy atmosphere that made the air seem hard to breathe. Where are we going? Arthur asked, trying to keep his voice steady. To a place where we can talk without interruptions, Quentin replied, driving out of town. A place that has special meaning to our story. After a 40-minute drive in tense silence, they arrived at an abandoned farm on the outskirts of Oakhaven. Arthur recognized the place immediately. It was where Quentin had taken Carmen on some dates when they were dating years ago. Recognize the place? Quentin asked with a cruel smile. This is where Carmen told me she was in love with another man. With you. Quentin, that was over 5 years ago. You can't live the rest of your life stuck in the past. It's not about the past, Arthur. It's about justice. Carmen was mine until you showed up with your company and your money, promising her a life I could never offer. They got out of the car and walked to the old farmhouse. The place was in ruins, with broken tiles and peeling walls, but it still had a solid structure. Quentin opened the front door and motioned for Arthur to enter. The interior of the house was empty, except for a few old chairs and a worm-eaten wooden table. There was a smell of mold and abandonment that made the environment seem even more sinister. "Sit down," Quentin ordered, pointing to one of the chairs. "We're going to have a long talk." "Quentin, I brought the money you asked for. We can end this now." "Money?" Quentin laughed bitterly. "You really thought this was about money? Arthur, you destroyed my life. You took the only woman I ever truly loved from me. And then, you had the audacity to build a family with her while I spent years trying to get over the loss. Carmen made a choice. It wasn't something I forced. She made a choice based on lies. You promised her a world of opportunities, a comfortable life. But you never told her you were willing to get your hands dirty with illegal business to maintain that standard of living, did you?" Arthur fell silent. It was true that at the time he met Carmen, he was already starting to get involved in questionable business practices. "And now," Quentin continued, "you've discovered that your current wife is a gambling addict who almost destroyed your company. Ironic, isn't it? The man who stole my woman for financial stability ended up marrying someone who brought him to ruin." At that moment, Quentin's cell phone rang. He answered with a satisfied smile. "Yes? Did you find where they are? Great. Don't do anything yet, just keep an eye on them." Arthur felt his blood run cold. "You have people following Leo?" "I have people following everyone who matters to you. Your little street daughter, the nurse who loves taking care of others so much, and especially my dear little grandson." "Grandson? Oh, you didn't know?" Quentin leaned forward, his eyes shining with malice. "Leo isn't just Carmen's son. By a very interesting twist of genetics, he also carries my blood." The revelation hit Arthur like a lightning bolt. "That's impossible. Did Carmen never tell you she was pregnant when she started dating you?" "The baby she lost 3 months before she got pregnant with Leo was my son, and by my calculations, there's a very real possibility that Leo is my descendant, not yours." Arthur stood up abruptly from the chair. "You're lying." "Am I? Then why does Leo have the same birthmark that I have? The same one my daughter Jocelyn has, a crescent moon on his left shoulder." Arthur's mind raced, remembering the distinctive mark that Leo had since birth, a mark he had always assumed was just a genetic coincidence. "Even if that were true," he said, struggling to maintain some control, "that doesn't give you any right over Leo, doesn't it?" "Well, we'll find out, because right now my associates are heading to the church where the women are hiding with my grandson." On the other side of town, Dolores arrived at the church when she saw 2 men in a dark car parked across the street. They were watching the religious building intently, and one of them was constantly on the phone. She quickly entered the church through a side door and found Jocelyn praying with the children in the front row of pews. "Jocelyn, we have a problem," she said softly. "There are men watching the church." "What do we do?" "Father Michael said we can use the secret passage that connects the church to the convent next door. The nuns will hide us until we can get help." As they discreetly organized the move, Lily noticed that Leo had woken up and was staring intently at the image of Saint Sebastian on the main altar. The baby was stretching his little arms toward the statue, as if trying to reach it. "Auntie Jocelyn, I think Leo is trying to tell us something," Lily murmured. Jocelyn looked in the direction Leo was pointing and noticed something she hadn't seen before. There was a small drawer at the base of the statue, almost imperceptible. Moved by curiosity, she approached and managed to open the drawer. Inside was a sealed envelope with the name Carmen written on the front. "Dolores, come see this." Dolores carefully opened the envelope and found a letter that made her hands tremble as she read, "Carmen, if you are reading this, it means something has happened to me. Quentin found out about our daughter Jocelyn and threatened to hurt her if I didn't go back to him. I can't put our daughter in danger, but I also can't live a lie. The truth about Leo is in God's hands now. He will know how to protect our children when we can't. Forgive me for not being stronger. Carmen." The revelation in the letter changed everything they thought they knew about Carmen and Quentin's story, and it explained why Leo had reacted so specially to Jocelyn's presence from day one. At that moment, the church bells began to ring, not to mark the hour, but as an alarm signal that Father Michael had arranged with them in case of danger. Quentin's men were trying to enter the church. The sound of the bells echoed through the church like a cry for help, making Dolores grab Leo from Lily's arms while Jocelyn was still processing the revelations from Carmen's letter. The small secret passage that Father Michael had mentioned was behind the altar, hidden by a wooden panel that seemed merely decorative. "Quick, girls," the priest whispered, pushing the panel to reveal a narrow, dark corridor. "The sisters are waiting for you on the other side." Lily was the first to enter the passage, followed by Jocelyn, who carried Carmen's letter folded against her chest. Dolores, with Leo in her arms, looked back one last time before entering the corridor. Through the church's stained-glass windows, she could see the silhouettes of two men trying to force the main entrance. The corridor was longer than they expected, with damp stone walls, and an earthy smell that reminded Lily of the nights she spent hiding in storm drains and abandoned buildings. But this time, she wasn't alone. She had people who cared about her, and a baby to protect. On the other side, in the convent of St. Teresa, Sister Benedicta was waiting for them with a stern but welcoming expression. The 70-year-old nun had dedicated her life to protecting the helpless, and she would not be intimidated by criminals threatening children. "Come, my daughters, we have a safe place for you," she said, guiding them through silent corridors to a room at the back of the convent. "I have already notified the authorities about the men in the church." Meanwhile, at the abandoned farm, Arthur was facing revelations that shook everything he believed about his life. Quentin had just shown him old photographs that supposedly proved his theory about Leo's paternity. "Look at these photos, Arthur," Quentin said, spreading faded images on the wooden table. "Carmen pregnant, 3 months before she met you. And here, her in the hospital, losing our first child." Arthur studied the photographs, feeling a mixture of confusion and horror growing in his chest. "Even if that were true, Leo is legally my son. I registered him. I've cared for him since birth." "Ah, but legality is a flexible thing when you have the right connections." Quentin laughed bitterly. "And after you disappear from this earth, who will question a grandfather's right to care for his orphaned grandson?" "Disappear? What are you talking about? Arthur, did you really think I would let you go on living after everything you did to me? After stealing Carmen? After building a life on lies and corruption?" It was at that moment that Quentin showed a weapon that was hidden under his jacket. It wasn't a firearm, but a small vial with a clear liquid. "Do you know what this is? It's the same poison that killed Carmen in childbirth." Arthur's blood ran cold. Carmen wasn't poisoned. She had complications during labor. "Complications that I caused," Quentin said with terrifying coldness. "I had access to the hospital through contacts. It was very easy to add a special substance to her IV drip during labor, something that would cause internal bleeding, without leaving obvious traces." You killed Carmen?" "I served justice. If I couldn't have her, no one else could. But I made a mistake in letting Leo live. A mistake I will correct today." Arthur stood up abruptly, the chair falling backward with a crash. "You're a monster. I'm a man who was robbed of everything he loved, and now I'm going to get back what's mine." At that moment, Quentin's phone rang. It was one of the men he had sent to the church. "Boss, they're not here. The priest says they left an hour ago, but we found signs that there were children hiding. And we found this." Quentin listened for a few seconds before hanging up with an expression of fury. "It seems your protégés are smarter than I thought. But it doesn't matter. I have other plans." In the convent, Dolores finally managed to contact the local authorities through the nun's phone. Detective Ronald Miller, an honest man who was not part of Quentin's corruption network, promised to send protection immediately. "Jocelyn, I need to ask you something about this letter," Dolores said, rereading Carmen's document. "She mentions that Quentin found out about our daughter Jocelyn. What does that mean? Jocelyn, who had been holding Leo while he slept, looked up with a growing expression of confusion. My mother always told me my father had left when I was little. She never mentioned Carmen. But look at the date on this letter, Dolores said, pointing to the paper. It was written 2 days before Leo was born, and she talks about Jocelyn as her daughter too. That's impossible. My mother's name was Rose Myers. Was Rose her maiden name? No, she was always a Myers, for as long as I can remember. Lily, who had been listening to the conversation in silence, suddenly made an observation that changed everything. Auntie Jocelyn, you have the same mark as Leo. What mark? That little moon-shaped spot on your shoulder. I saw it when you changed your clothes yesterday. Jocelyn and Dolores looked at each other, simultaneously understanding the implications of that observation. If Jocelyn and Leo had the same distinctive birthmark, and if Carmen's letter suggested a family connection. Dolores, Jocelyn said in a trembling voice, I think Carmen was my real mother. And Rose must have raised me to protect me from Quentin. The revelation fell upon them like a bombshell. If Jocelyn was the daughter of Carmen and Quentin, that made her Leo's older sister, and it explained why the baby had reacted so naturally to her presence from the first day. But that means Quentin is really my biological father, Jocelyn whispered, the realization bringing a mixture of horror and understanding. And that means he's after his own children, Dolores said grimly. At that moment, Sister Benedicta entered the room with an urgent expression. Girls, we just received a threatening call. A man said that if you don't hand over the child by sunset, he will start hurting the people. You love? What kind of harm? Dolores asked, fearing the answer. He specifically mentioned Father Michael and the parishioners who tried to help you at the church. The realization that Quentin was willing to hurt innocent people to get what he wanted made Jocelyn make a decision that would change the course of everything. I'm going to turn myself into him, she said with determination. I'm his daughter. If it's revenge he wants against Carmen's family, maybe he'll accept seeing me instead of insisting on Leo. Absolutely not, Dolores protested. You don't know the true nature of this man. Yes, I do. I grew up my whole life knowing my father was capable of abandoning a daughter. Now I know he's capable of much worse. But if I can protect Leo and all of you, I'll do it. Lily, who had been watching the whole discussion, suddenly got up and went to the window. Auntie Jocelyn, there's a car just like the one that was at the church parked outside. They all rushed to the window and saw the same black sedan parked on the street in front of the convent. Quentin had found out where they were hiding, and this time there was nowhere to run. Sister Benedicta, Dolores said urgently, do you have any place in the convent where we can hide until the police arrive? We have the crypt under the chapel, but if these men are willing to invade a sacred place— At that moment, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the convent's corridors. Quentin had decided to handle the situation personally, and he was no longer interested in negotiating. The heavy footsteps echoed through the convent corridors like war drums, each sound making Dolores's heart beat faster. Sister Benedicta quickly guided the group through a side door that led to the chapel's underground crypt, a cold, damp space where generations of nuns had been buried. You'll be safe down here until the police arrive, the nun whispered, but her voice trembled with uncertainty. Lily descended the stone steps carrying a small flashlight that Sister Benedicta had given her, while Jocelyn followed behind with Leo in her arms. The baby had woken up and was whimpering softly, as if sensing the tension that dominated the environment. The crypt was a labyrinth of narrow corridors and niches in the walls where the mortal remains of the sisters who had dedicated their lives to the convent rested. The air was heavy and filled with history, but it also offered multiple escape routes if they were discovered. Auntie Jocelyn, Lily whispered, why does your dad want to hurt Leo so much if he's his grandson? Because some people get so hurt inside that they only know how to hurt others, Jocelyn replied, fighting back tears. My father can't truly love anyone. Meanwhile, in the convent corridors above them, Quentin walked slowly, examining each room with methodical precision. He had entered the building without violence, simply lying to Sister Benedicta about being a concerned relative looking for his missing daughter. Sister, I know they're here, he said with false cordiality. I don't want to cause any trouble for you. I just need to talk to my daughter about important family matters. Sister Benedicta, who had returned to distract him while the others hid, maintained a serene expression despite the fear she felt. Sir, there is no family here but the sisters. Please, don't force me to be unpleasant. Quentin said, his voice taking on a darker tone. "I know you have a kind heart and want to protect those in need, but interfering with my family affairs could have consequences." In the crypt, Dolores had found a larger niche where they could temporarily hide. It was a space that had once housed the tomb of the convent's founding mother, but was now empty after a renovation years ago. "Jocelyn, I need to tell you something important about Carmen," Dolores whispered, as they settled into the hiding place. "She came to see me a few weeks before Leo was born. She was terrified, said Quentin had made specific threats." "What kind of threats?" "He said if she tried to raise the child away from him, he would make sure the child never grew up to know its mother. Carmen interpreted it as a kidnapping threat, but now, knowing he poisoned her..." Jocelyn hugged Leo tighter, understanding the implications. "He was planning to kill my mother from the beginning. And he probably planned to keep you and Leo for himself, a family he could completely control." Lily, who was guarding the entrance to the crypt, suddenly signaled for them to be quiet. There were sounds of movement in the chapel above, low voices talking. It was then they heard Quentin's voice echoing through the chapel's wooden floor. "Jocelyn, I know you can hear me. I'm your father, and it's time for us to be a family again." The false tone of affection made Jocelyn shiver. It was the same voice she vaguely remembered from her childhood, before he abandoned the family. "You've grown so much, my daughter. You're taking care of people, saving lives. Exactly what I always knew you would do, but now I need you to take care of our family, to bring Leo home." Jocelyn bit her lip to keep from responding. Part of her, the little girl that still existed in her heart, wanted to believe there was genuine kindness in her father's words, but the adult she had become knew how to recognize manipulation when she heard it. "If you don't show yourself in 5 minutes," Quentin continued, and now his voice lost all its false gentleness, "I'm going to start hurting the people who tried to help you, starting with this very helpful nun." A heavy silence followed these words, broken only by the sound of Leo breathing peacefully in Jocelyn's arms. It was then that Lily did something no one expected. The 4-year-old girl stood up determinedly and began to climb the crypt steps. "Lily, no!" Dolores whispered, but the girl was already out of her reach. Lily emerged into the chapel through a side door hidden behind the altar, her small figure contrasting with the grandeur of the sacred space. Quentin had his back to her, examining the church pews for signs of his fugitives. "Sir," Lily said in her clear, brave voice, "are you Auntie Jocelyn's daddy?" Quentin turned, surprised to find a child alone. His eyes narrowed as he analyzed the girl in torn clothes and disheveled hair. "And you must be the little beggar girl who saved Leo," he said, crouching down to her level. "Quite impressive bravery for such a small child. Are you going to hurt Leo?" "I want to get my family back, little one. Leo is my grandson, and he should be with me, not hiding in dark, scary places." Lily studied Quentin's face with the sharp perception that street children develop to identify danger. There was something in his eyes that reminded her of the men she had learned to avoid on the streets, a coldness that didn't match the kind words. "If you're real family, why is everyone afraid of you?" The simple, direct question caught Quentin off guard. For a moment, his mask of a concerned gentleman slipped, revealing the irritation he felt at being questioned by a child. "Sometimes families have arguments, little one, but in the end, we always work things out." "How are you going to work it out?" "By talking, like civilized people." At that moment, Sister Benedicta entered the chapel, clearly worried about leaving Lily alone with a stranger. "Sir, the child needs to go back to where she was." "Of course, sister. I was just getting to know this little heroine better." Lily looked at Sister Benedicta and then back at Quentin. Even at 4 years old, she could sense the undercurrents of tension and danger in the air. "Auntie Jocelyn!" she suddenly shouted, her voice echoing through the chapel. "Your daddy is here and he says he wants to talk." The response came from somewhere beneath the chapel floor. Jocelyn's voice, clear and determined. "Dad, if you really want to talk, then let's talk. But leave the children out of this." Quentin smiled, but it was a cold expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Ah, my dear daughter, finally ready to face reality? I'm ready to face you." And it was at that moment that the sound of sirens began to echo in the distance, growing closer and closer to the convent. Quentin's expression immediately hardened. "It seems our family reunion will have to be shorter than I planned." But instead of panic, what came over his face was something far more dangerous. the look of a man who had decided that if he couldn't have what he wanted, then nobody could. The sound of sirens approached rapidly, but Quentin showed no signs of panic. Instead, his expression became even more dangerous, like that of a cornered animal deciding to attack rather than flee. He grabbed Lily's arm with enough force to hurt her. "Stop hurting me!" the girl cried, trying to pull away. "Sister Benedicta, go get my daughter and my grandson. Now, or this child will get hurt much more." Then a squeezed arm. The elderly nun looked at Lily, who was fighting back tears but trying to be brave, and then at the man who had clearly lost any trace of sanity. "Sir, please, don't hurt an innocent child." "Innocent?" Quentin laughed bitterly. "This girl ruined all my plans. Because of her, Leo isn't where he should be. Because of her, you all had time to hide and call the police." In the crypt below, Jocelyn and Dolores heard Lily's cry and knew they could no longer hide. The safety of the girl who had saved Leo was more important than any protection strategy. "Dolores, stay here with Leo," Jocelyn said, determination firm in her voice. "I'm going up to face my father." "No, Jocelyn, it's too dangerous. It's my responsibility. Lily is only in danger because of me, because of my family. And Leo is my younger brother. I need to protect him." Jocelyn carefully handed Leo to Dolores and climbed the steps of the crypt. When she emerged into the chapel, she saw Quentin holding Lily in a way that was clearly hurting her. The girl was trying to be brave, but tears were streaming down her face. "Let her go," Jocelyn said, her voice firm despite the fear she felt. "It's me you want." Quentin smiled upon seeing the daughter he had abandoned 23 years ago. "Jocelyn, my beautiful daughter, you've grown up exactly as I imagined you would. You have no right to call me your daughter. Fathers don't abandon their children. I didn't abandon you. I left to get the resources needed to care for our family, to build an empire that would one day be yours." "Lies," Jocelyn said, taking a step toward him. "You ran away because you were too cowardly to face your responsibilities." Quentin's face contorted with anger. "Responsibilities? I take responsibility. That's why I'm here, taking back what's mine. Leo is my grandson, and you are my daughter. You belong to me. People don't belong to anyone. And Leo has a family that loves him. A family built on lies and corruption." Quentin spat. "Arthur Kavanaugh is no better than me. In fact, he's worse, because he hides behind a facade of respectability." It was at that moment that the sirens stopped outside the convent. The voices of police officers could be heard giving orders and surrounding the building. "Last chance, Jocelyn," Quentin said, tightening his grip on Lily's arm. "Bring Leo here now, or this girl will pay for your choices." Jocelyn looked at Lily, who stared back at her with big, trusting eyes, as if she knew her Auntie Jocelyn would find a way to save her. The faith of that 4-year-old was both inspiring and terrifying. "Dad," Jocelyn said, using the word for the first time in decades, "you said you want to get your family back. So here I am, your daughter. You don't have to hurt anyone else. But I need Leo too. He's all that's left of Carmen. Leo is not a possession. He's a child who needs love, not revenge." At that moment, the main door of the chapel burst open, violently. Detective Ronald Miller entered, accompanied by 2 officers, all with weapons drawn. "Police, let the child go and put your hands where we can see them." Quentin laughed frighteningly. What perfect timing, just when our family reunion was getting interesting. Instead of releasing Lily, he pulled her closer, using her as a human shield. "Everyone back off. This child only gets hurt if you force me to." "Sir, there's no need for this," the detective said, trying to keep his voice calm. "We can resolve this situation by talking." "Talking?" Quentin was clearly losing control. "I've spent 23 years trying to talk. 23 years building an empire, accumulating power, waiting for the right moment to get my family back. And now you want to talk?" Jocelyn realized that her father was on the verge of a total breakdown, and that Lily was in mortal danger. She needed to act, but any false move could result in the death of the girl who had saved Leo. It was then she had a desperate idea. "Dad, you said Leo is all that's left of Carmen, but you're wrong. I'm also Carmen's daughter, and I'm right here, in front of you." Quentin stopped moving, processing her words. "You want your family back? Then accept me as your real daughter. Let Lily go, and I'll go with you. Willingly." "Jocelyn, no!" Sister Benedicta cried. "Don't sacrifice yourself for us." But Jocelyn wasn't sacrificing herself. She was betting on the one thing that might appeal to what was left of humanity in Quentin, his desperate need to have a family. "I'll go with you, Dad, but only if you leave Lily and Leo in peace, forever." Quentin looked at the daughter he had abandoned, then at the girl he was holding, and finally at the police officers surrounding him. For a moment, something like genuine conflict crossed his face. It was in this moment of hesitation that Lily did something no one expected. With the agility she had developed living on the streets, she quickly ducked and slipped from Quentin's grasp, running directly to Jocelyn. "Auntie Jocelyn!" she cried, hugging the nurse's legs. The sudden movement caught Quentin off guard, and the police seized the opportunity. In a matter of seconds, he was on the ground, handcuffed and restrained. But even in handcuffs, he continued to scream, "You don't understand. Leo is my grandson. Jocelyn is my daughter. I have rights." "You lost all your rights when you decided to threaten children," Detective Miller said firmly. As the police took Quentin out of the chapel, Jocelyn knelt down to Lily's level. "Are you hurt, my dear?" "I'm okay," Lily answered bravely. "But is Leo safe?" "He is, thanks to you." It was then that Dolores emerged from the crypt, carrying Leo in her arms. The baby had slept through the entire confrontation, oblivious to the danger he had been in. "Is it over?" Dolores asked, still trembling from the tension of the last few minutes. "It's over," Jocelyn confirmed, but even as she said it, she knew there were far more complex issues yet to be resolved, because Quentin had been arrested, but the entire corruption scheme he ran was still in operation, and somewhere, Arthur Kavanaugh was still missing, possibly in mortal danger. The battle for Leo had been won, but the war for the truth was just beginning. 3 hours after Quentin's arrest, Dolores, Jocelyn, and Lily were at the police station giving statements when news arrived that completely changed the course of the investigation. A state trooper had found Arthur Kavanaugh's car abandoned on a secondary road, 40 miles from Oakhaven, with clear signs of a struggle inside. "There's no blood in the vehicle," Detective Miller explained to the 3 women, "but we found Arthur's cell phone on the floor and the keys thrown in the nearby bushes. It looks like he was forced out of the car." Leo slept peacefully in Lily's lap, who had categorically refused to let anyone else hold him. The 4-year-old girl had developed a fierce protective instinct for the baby, and Jocelyn realized this bond went far beyond simple care. It was as if Lily knew that Leo was her responsibility. "Detective," Jocelyn said, "during the interrogations, Quentin mentioned other people involved in the scheme. Local politicians, public officials, businessmen. If Arthur has disappeared, it might be because someone wants to silence him. We're already investigating that possibility, but I need you all to understand that you could be in danger too. You know too much about Quentin's operations." It was at that moment that a discovery in Arthur's office brought even more shocking revelations. Investigators had found a hidden safe containing documents detailing not only the corruption scheme, but also a much more sinister plan. "Look at this," the detective said, spreading photographs and papers on his desk. Quentin wasn't just laundering money. He was coordinating a scheme to forge adoption documents. Dolores picked up one of the papers, her eyes widening as she read. "Forging adoptions? What does that mean?" "It means children were being illegally taken from their families and sold to people who wanted to adopt without going through the legal process. Leo wasn't the first baby Quentin tried to kidnap." The revelation hit Jocelyn like a punch to the gut. "How many children?" "According to the documents we found, at least 15 in the last 3 years. All from vulnerable families, parents with financial problems, drug addicts, domestic violence situations." Lily, who had been listening to the conversation in silence, suddenly looked up. "Like me," she said, with the devastating simplicity of children. "What do you mean, my dear?" Dolores asked. "I didn't have a family before I found you all. If the bad man wanted to take me, no one would have looked for me." Lily's observation made everyone realize that she herself could have been a potential target for Quentin. A street girl, without documents, with no known family. She would have been the perfect victim for the scheme. "Detective," Jocelyn said urgently, "you need to check if Lily's name appears in any of these documents." While investigators examined the papers, a call came in that everyone feared. It was from a hospital in a neighboring city. Arthur had been found. "He's alive," the detective said after hanging up, "but in serious condition. Apparently he was beaten and left on a dirt road." A truck driver found him and took him to the hospital. Can we see him? Dolores asked. You can, but he's still unconscious. The doctors say it will be a few hours before he wakes up. During the drive to the hospital, Jocelyn couldn't stop thinking about the complexity of the whole situation. In less than a week, her life had completely changed. She had discovered she was Carmen's daughter, Leo's sister, and that her biological father was a criminal who kidnapped children. Auntie Jocelyn, Lily said from the back seat of the police car, what's going to happen to Leo now? I don't know, my dear. It depends on what happens to Arthur. And if he doesn't get better, will Leo be without a dad? Leo will never be alone, Jocelyn promised. I'll take care of him. We all will. At the hospital, they found Arthur in an intensive care unit, connected to several machines. His face was swollen and covered in bruises, and there were bandages on various parts of his body. The injuries are consistent with a beating, explained the attending physician, Dr. Evans. Fractured ribs, mild head trauma, multiple cuts and contusions. Whoever did this wanted to send a message. What kind of message? Dolores asked. The kind that says, keep your mouth shut, or it will be worse next time. While they waited for Arthur to wake up, a nurse from the hospital approached Jocelyn with a curious expression. Sorry to bother you, but don't you work at the municipal hospital in Oak Haven? Yes, I do. Why? It's just that one of the patients here mentioned she knows you, Audrey Cavanaugh, from the rehab clinic. She's here for some medical tests. The name Audrey reminded Jocelyn that there was an important piece of the puzzle that hadn't been solved yet. Arthur's wife, who was supposedly in treatment for a gambling addiction. Can we talk to her? Dolores asked. She's in room 205, but, well, she's been very agitated since she heard what happened to her husband. When they entered Audrey's room, they found a completely different woman from the one Arthur had described. Instead of a destructive gambling addict, they saw a thin, pale, and clearly terrified woman. Audrey? Jocelyn said gently. I'm Jocelyn, a nurse. I came to talk about Arthur. Audrey looked up and immediately started to cry. They said he's hurt. It was because of me, wasn't it? All of this happened because of me. What do you mean? I'm not a gambling addict, Audrey confessed between sobs. Quentin forced me to tell Arthur that. In fact, he's been blackmailing me for months. Dolores sat in the chair next to the bed. Blackmailing you how? He had photographs, intimate photographs that were taken without my knowledge when I was vulnerable. He said if I didn't cooperate with his plans, he would spread the photos on the internet and destroy my reputation. And what kind of cooperation did he want? Information about Arthur's company, about our assets, about Leo, and most importantly, he wanted me to convince Arthur to sign some documents transferring Leo's custody to distant relatives. Jocelyn understood immediately. The distant relatives were people from Quentin's scheme. Exactly. I refused to do it, so he escalated the threats. He said if I didn't cooperate, something terrible would happen to Leo. Is that when you made up the story about the gambling debts? Yes. I thought if Arthur believed I had serious problems, he would check me into a clinic and I'd be safe from Quentin. But it didn't work. Quentin had contacts even at the clinic. Lily, who had been listening to the whole conversation in silence, suddenly asked a question that surprised everyone. Auntie Audrey, do you like Leo? Audrey looked at the small girl holding the baby so carefully. I tried to like him, but he always reminded me of Carmen, the woman Arthur loved before me. It was hard to look at Leo and not feel jealous. But now, Lily insisted, now I realize that Leo is just an innocent child who needs love, and I was foolish to let jealousy blind me to that. At that moment, a nurse came to tell them that Arthur had woken up and was asking for Leo. Can he have visitors? Jocelyn asked. For a few minutes only, and the child can't enter the ICU. It was decided that Lily would stay in the hallway with Leo, while Jocelyn and Dolores spoke with Arthur. When they entered the ICU room, they found a man who was visibly weakened, but with alert and worried eyes. Leo, is he okay? Were Arthur's first words. He's safe, Jocelyn assured him. Lily is taking care of him. Lily, the girl who saved him. Arthur closed his eyes for a moment. I need to tell you what I discovered about Quentin. It's much worse than we imagined. And what Arthur revealed in the following minutes would forever change their understanding of the whole situation. Quentin wasn't just selling children, Arthur said in a weak voice, struggling to stay conscious. He was creating a network of fake families to launder money from criminal sources. Jocelyn and Dolores moved closer to the bed. understanding that what Arthur was revealing was even more sinister than they had imagined. "What do you mean, fake families?" Dolores asked. "Rich people with dirty money paid huge amounts to adopt children through Quentin. But it wasn't a real adoption. The children were used as justifications for financial transfers, child support, education expenses, expensive health plans, all ways to turn illegal money into legitimate family expenses. And what happened to the children afterward?" Arthur closed his eyes, clearly fighting through the pain. "Some were actually raised by these families, but as domestic servants, not as children. Others just disappeared when they were no longer useful to the scheme." The revelation made Jocelyn feel nauseous. "How many children disappeared?" "I don't know for sure. Quentin showed me documents mentioning at least 8 in the last 2 years, all from vulnerable families, all officially adopted by people who didn't even know they existed." "Why did he tell you this?" "To show me he had total power, that if I didn't cooperate, Leo would be the next victim, and that if I tried to report him, no one would believe the word of a corrupt businessman against that of a respected man in the community." Outside the ICU, Lily was sitting in a hallway chair, rocking Leo, who had started to cry. A nurse had offered a bottle, but the baby rejected it, clearly stressed by the absence of his familiar figures. "Are you hungry, little Leo?" Lily murmured, humming softly the same tune she had learned on the streets. To her surprise, the baby immediately calmed down and began to take the bottle. It was at that moment that Audrey appeared in the hallway, walking slowly with a hospital walker. When she saw Lily with Leo, she stopped and watched the scene for a few minutes. "You're very good with him," she finally said, approaching. "He likes music," Lily replied simply. "He's less sad when I sing." Can I hold him?" Audrey asked hesitantly. Lily studied the woman's face with the sharp perception street children develop to assess intentions. There was something different about Audrey now, a genuine sadness mixed with what seemed to be regret. "You won't hurt him?" "Never," Audrey promised, extending her arms. When Lily handed her Leo, something extraordinary happened. For the first time since the baby was born, Audrey looked at him not as a painful reminder of Carmen, but as a child who needed protection and affection. "He's so tiny," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "How could I have been so cruel to someone so defenseless?" "People sometimes get hurt and do bad things," Lily said with the startling wisdom of a child who had seen too much suffering. "But they can get better." Meanwhile, in the ICU, Arthur was revealing the most shocking part of the whole story. "There's something else you need to know about Quentin. He didn't choose Leo randomly. There was a specific reason." "What reason?" Jocelyn asked. "Leo has a rare medical condition that was only discovered in his routine hospital exams. He has an extremely rare blood type, and Quentin knew it." "How did he know?" "Because he has contacts in the hospital who passed him confidential medical information. And Leo is a match for a bone marrow donation for a specific child." Dolores felt her blood run cold. "Are you saying Quentin wanted Leo to use as an unwilling donor? The child who needs the marrow is the daughter of a local politician who pays Quentin very well to keep certain secrets quiet." The calculated coldness of Quentin's plan left both women in shock. It wasn't just about revenge or control. It was about using an innocent child as a bargaining chip in an even larger political scheme. "Arthur, how did you find this out?" "Quentin showed me Leo's medical records when he was trying to convince me to cooperate. He said if I handed over my son voluntarily, he would ensure the procedure was done safely and that Leo would survive. And if you refused, he said he would do the marrow extraction anyway, but without proper anesthesia, as a lesson to other parents who thought about challenging him." Jocelyn had to lean against the wall to keep from fainting. The monstrosity of what Quentin was planning went beyond anything she could have imagined. At that moment, Detective Miller appeared in the hospital corridor with an urgent expression. "I need to speak with you all immediately. We have important developments in the case." When they gathered in a private room at the hospital, the detective brought news that further complicated the situation. "We interrogated Quentin for 6 hours. He confessed nothing about the child trafficking scheme, but our investigators found something disturbing." "What?" "A list of names of families who were the next targets, and the name Lily Fortune is on that list." Lily, who was playing with Leo in a corner of the room, looked up when she heard her name. "Did someone say my name?" "No, my dear, keep playing," Dolores said quickly, but the fear in her voice was palpable. "Why would Lily's name be on a list? Jocelyn asked. Because she is the main witness in the whole case. She saw Quentin trying to get rid of Leo. She can identify him, and most importantly, she saved Leo's life. To Quentin, she represents a threat. But he's in jail now. Yes, but his operation didn't just depend on him. We have evidence that at least 6 other people are actively involved in the scheme, and some of them are still free. As if summoned by the detective's words, Dolores's cell phone rang. It was an unknown number, but when she answered, the voice on the other end made her heart stop. Dolores Sanchez? This is John, an associate of Quentin Myers. What do you want? I want to talk about the situation with the child you're protecting, and about the little girl who's been causing so much trouble for our business. We have nothing to talk about. I think we do, because right now, some of my friends are watching the hospital where you are, and it would be a shame if something happened to all those innocent people because of your stubbornness. Dolores looked out the room's window and saw 2 dark cars parked in the hospital parking lot. Men in suits were leaning against the vehicles, clearly watching the building's entrances. What do you want? We want you to hand over Leo and Lily to us, voluntarily. In return, we guarantee no one else gets hurt. And if we refuse, then we'll have to settle this the hard way. And I can assure you, you won't like the consequences. The call ended, leaving everyone in the room in a tense silence. They had thought Quentin's arrest would solve the problem, but now they realized they had only provoked a much larger and more dangerous beast. Lily continued to play with Leo, oblivious to the mortal danger that was approaching, but even at 4 years old, she knew how to recognize when the adults around her were scared. Auntie Jocelyn, she said softly, are we going to have to run away again? We're not running anymore, Jocelyn said, with a determination that surprised everyone in the room. Lily, Leo, and all of us deserve to live in peace, without fear, and the only way to achieve that is to face this situation head-on. Detective Miller looked at her with concern. Jocelyn, I understand your frustration, but confronting dangerous criminals is not the solution. We need to protect you until we can arrest everyone involved. And how long will that take? Weeks, months, years? Jocelyn picked up Leo, the baby immediately calming at her touch. This child deserves to grow up in a normal family, not hiding from monsters for the rest of his life. It was then that Audrey, who had been silently observing the whole discussion, made a statement that completely changed the dynamic of the situation. I know how to end this, she said, her voice firm despite the visible tremors in her hands. I have information that can destroy Quentin's entire network. Everyone turned to look at her. What kind of information? The detective asked. Quentin didn't know, but I recorded some of our conversations when he was blackmailing me. I have recordings of him admitting to the child kidnapping scheme, names of politicians involved, bribery amounts. Everything. Dolores stood up abruptly. Why didn't you say this before? Because I was afraid. The recordings are hidden in a place only I know. If I died, they would never be found. It was my only protection. Where are these recordings? The detective asked, clearly interested. At my old job. I've been an accountant for 15 years at an export company. I hid a flash drive in the company's file system, inside a folder of old documents that no one has accessed in years. Why would you do this now? Why expose yourself to danger? Audrey looked at Leo, who was playing with Jocelyn's fingers. Because I can no longer live knowing that my silence allows other children to suffer, and because Leo deserves to have a family that truly protects him. At that moment, the hospital phone rang at the reception. It was for Dolores. When she answered, the voice on the other end was different from the previous call, younger, more nervous. Mrs. Sanchez, my name is Carla. I work for the people who are looking for you. What do you want? I want to warn you that an ambush is being prepared. My boss doesn't know I'm calling, but I have a daughter Lily's age. I can't stay quiet knowing that innocent children are going to get hurt. What kind of ambush? They plan to raid the hospital tonight. They'll pretend to be relatives of patients to get in, then they'll search for you room by room. They have informants inside the hospital who have given them your exact location. Why are you telling me this? Because there's a way out they don't know about. There's a maintenance tunnel that connects the hospital to the commercial building across the street. It was used in the old days to transport supplies. If you leave that way, you can escape without being seen. Dolores looked around the room where they were hiding. Where is this tunnel? In the basement, near the laundry room. I'll leave the door unlocked and the lights on. But you have to go now. before the shift change. It's your only chance." The call ended, leaving everyone to process this new information. Was it a trap or a real chance to escape? "Detective, this woman might be telling the truth," Jocelyn said. "During my years working in hospitals, I've heard about these old tunnels. And what if it's a trap? Then at least we tried to fight for our freedom instead of waiting passively to be captured." It was Lily who made the decision for everyone. The girl stood up, walked to the window and pointed to the parking lot. "The bad men are moving," she said with the simplicity of someone who grew up watching for danger on the streets. Everyone rushed to the window and saw she was right. The men who had been watching the hospital were getting out of their cars and heading towards the main entrances. "We have no choice," the detective said. "We'll try the tunnel." The journey to the hospital basement was tense and silent. Audrey, still weak from her medication, was supported by Dolores, while Jocelyn carried Leo, and Lily walked beside them, watching every shadow and every sound. The hospital basement was a labyrinth of corridors and technical rooms. The smell of disinfectant mixed with dampness created an oppressive atmosphere that made even Lily, accustomed to dark places, feel uneasy. "This way," the detective whispered, following the directions Carla had given. "The laundry room is at the end of this corridor." When they reached the indicated spot, they found a heavy metal door that was indeed unlocked. Behind it, a dark tunnel stretched towards the neighboring commercial building. "I'll go first," the detective said, carefully testing the tunnel floor. "The place seems safe, but it's better if we go one at a time." It was as they were preparing to enter the tunnel that they heard voices echoing through the basement corridors, men speaking in low tones, clearly looking for something or someone. "They've found where we are," Jocelyn whispered, clutching Leo to her chest. "Quick, everyone into the tunnel," the detective ordered. But it was too late. 3 men appeared at the end of the corridor, wearing hospital scrubs to disguise themselves, but carrying objects that were clearly not medical equipment. "We found you," said the group's leader, a tall, thin man with a scar on his face. "Now let's resolve this civilly. Hand over the children and no one gets hurt." "Never," Jocelyn replied firmly. "What a shame," the man sighed. "We were hoping you'd be more reasonable." It was at that moment that something unexpected happened. From the tunnel behind them, a figure emerged that no one expected to see. It was Arthur Cavanaugh, leaning on crutches and visibly injured, but determined. He had left the hospital against all medical advice. "Leave my family alone," he said, his voice weak but resolute. "Ah, the brave daddy decided to show up," the man with the scar laughed. "Perfect. Now we have everyone gathered in one place." "Not everyone," said a female voice from behind the criminals. It was Carla, the woman who had called to warn them about the ambush. But she wasn't alone. With her came 5 armed police officers, all wearing bulletproof vests. "Police! On the ground now!" The confrontation that followed lasted only a few seconds, but to Lily it felt like an eternity. She ducked down, protecting Leo with her own small body, as shouts and sounds of struggle echoed through the tunnel. When the silence finally returned, the 3 criminals were on the ground, handcuffed and immobilized. "It's okay," Carla said, approaching Lily and Leo. "You're safe now." "How did you know where we were?" Dolores asked, still trembling from the adrenaline. "Because I don't work for them," Carla explained, showing an ID. "I'm an undercover federal agent. We've been investigating Quentin's network for 6 months." The revelation that there was a federal operation underway brought immense relief, but also raised new questions about the true extent of the criminal scheme. "How many people are involved in this?" Jocelyn asked. "Over 30 so far," Carla replied. "Politicians, doctors, public officials, businessmen. It's one of the largest corruption and trafficking networks we've ever investigated in the region. And now? Now you can finally have a normal life. The operation is being wrapped up tonight. By tomorrow morning, everyone involved will be arrested." Leo, who had remained surprisingly calm throughout the confrontation, chose this moment to smile for the first time in days. It was as if he knew the nightmare had finally come to an end. But there was one last surprise waiting for all of them. The next morning, as the last members of Quentin's criminal network were being arrested in a coordinated operation involving 3 cities in the region, an unexpected discovery completely changed Lily Fortune's destiny. Federal agent Carla had spent the night analyzing the documents found in Quentin's offices, when she came across a file that made her heart race. It was a folder marked Special Cases that contained information about children who had disappeared from the system years ago. "Dolores, I need you all to come to the station urgently," she said over the phone. "We've found something about Lily that will change everything." An hour later, in the temporary office the federal agents had set up in Oakhaven, Carla spread documents on a table while Lily played with Leo in a corner of the room, oblivious to the importance of the information being revealed. "Lily isn't an orphan," Carla announced directly. "She has a family that has been looking for her for 2 years." The silence that followed was absolute. Dolores, Jocelyn, Arthur, and even Audrey, who had insisted on being present, were paralyzed by the revelation. "What do you mean?" Dolores finally managed to say. "Lily's real name is Amanda Ross. She disappeared from the city of Araxa when she was 2 years old, during a commotion in a public park. The family filed a missing person report, but the investigation never went anywhere." Carla showed photographs of a family. A man in his 40s, a younger woman and 2 children, a boy of about 8, and a little girl who was unmistakably a younger Lily. "Is that my family?" asked Lily, who had quietly approached to see the photos. "It is, my dear," Carla said gently. "Your parents are named Robert and Marcia Ross, and you have an older brother named Gavin." Lily studied the photographs with her usual seriousness. "Why didn't they come get me?" "They didn't know where you were. You were taken by people who worked for Quentin when you were very little. They changed your name and left you on the streets of Oakhaven so no one could find you." "But why did they do that to me?" Carla hesitated, looking at the adults present before answering. "Your real father is a prosecutor. He was investigating crimes similar to the ones Quentin was committing. To force him to stop the investigation, they kidnapped you." "And did he stop?" "No. Your father never stopped looking. Neither did your mother nor your brother. They have posters with your picture all over the region. They traveled to dozens of cities following leads. They never gave up on finding you." Tears began to stream down Lily's face, but they weren't tears of sadness. It was a complex mix of emotions that a 4-year-old girl struggled to understand. "Do they still want me?" she asked in a small voice. "They dream of the day they'll hug you again," Carla assured her. Jocelyn knelt beside Lily, holding her small hands. "My dear, this is wonderful. You're going home, to your real family." But Lily's reaction surprised everyone. Instead of joy, she seemed confused and even a little scared. "But I don't remember them," she said honestly. "And what's going to happen to you? To Leo?" "We'll be fine," Dolores said, trying to hide the pain she felt at the thought of separating from the girl who had become like a granddaughter to her. "But who will take care of Leo if I leave? He likes it when I sing. To him." Lily's genuine concern for Leo deeply touched everyone in the room. Even after discovering she had a biological family looking for her, her first concern was for the well-being of the baby she had saved. "Leo will be well taken care of," promised Arthur, who had improved significantly overnight. "Jocelyn will take care of him. She's his older sister." "For real?" Lily looked at Jocelyn with surprise. "Are you brother and sister?" "We are, and you taught us how to be a real family." At that moment, Carla received a call everyone was waiting for. It was from Lily's biological parents, who were on their way to Oakhaven after receiving the news that their daughter had been found. "They'll be here in 2 hours," Carla announced. "They're desperate to see her." "Do I have to go now?" Lily asked, clearly nervous. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to," Dolores said softly. "You can meet them first, talk, and then decide how you feel. What if I don't like them? Then we'll find a solution that's good for everyone," Carla promised. "The important thing is that you feel safe and loved." While they awaited the arrival of Lily's parents, important conversations took place that would define everyone's future. Arthur and Audrey had a long, honest talk about their marriage and about Leo. Audrey admitted she needed time to fully heal from the traumas she had suffered, but she wanted to try to be a real mother to Leo. "He deserves to have 2 mothers," Audrey said to Jocelyn. "You, who are his sister and have always protected him, and me, who needs to learn to love him without reservation." "Are you sure?" "I am. And I want you to continue to be a part of his life. I want him to grow up knowing he has a big, loving family." Jocelyn and Dolores also talked about the future. The discovery that Jocelyn was Carmen's daughter had created a deep bond between them, one that went beyond the extraordinary circumstances that had united them. "You will always be welcome in my home," Dolores said. You've become like a daughter to me, too. And you've become the grandmother Leo always needed, Jocelyn replied. When Robert and Marcia Ross arrived at the station, the tension in the air was palpable. They were exactly as they appeared in the photographs, but with 2 more years of grey hairs and lines of worry that showed the suffering they had endured. Lily hid behind Jocelyn when she saw the couple enter, her natural shyness intensified by the importance of the moment. "Amanda?" Marcia said in a trembling voice, using the girl's real name. "My girl, is it really you?" Lily peeked from behind Jocelyn, studying the faces of the strangers who claimed to be her parents. There was something familiar about them, a vague feeling like an almost forgotten memory. "Are you my real mom?" she asked shyly. "I am, my love. I'm your mom who never stopped looking for you." Robert knelt to Lily's level. "And I'm your daddy. Do you remember me calling you to show me the drawings you made?" Something clicked in Lily's mind. A fragmented memory of large hands helping her hold a pencil, of a deep voice saying, "How beautiful, princess." "Daddy," she whispered, taking a hesitant step toward him. "Yes, my princess. Daddy's here." The reunion that followed was emotional and touching, but also delicate. Lily had changed a lot in the 2 years she spent on the streets, and her parents would need time to rebuild the relationship with the daughter who was simultaneously the same child they had lost, and a completely different person. "Can she come with us now?" Marcia asked Carla. "Technically, yes, but we recommend a gradual transition. Lily has been through significant trauma and has formed important bonds here." Lily looked at Leo, who was sleeping peacefully in Jocelyn's arms, and then at the people who had become her chosen family in recent days. "Can I visit Leo?" she asked her biological parents. "He gets sad when I'm not around." "Of course, my love," Robert said immediately. "You can visit whenever you want." And so began a new phase in all of their lives, a phase of healing, reconciliation, and the discovery that family is not just about blood, but about love, protection, and choice. 8 months later, in a flowery backyard on the outskirts of Oakhaven, a very special birthday party was taking place. Lily, who had decided to keep the name she knew, but was officially Amanda Ross again, was turning 5, surrounded by a family that had grown far beyond blood ties. The backyard of the new house Arthur and Audrey had bought was decorated with colorful balloons and a table filled with homemade sweets that Dolores had insisted on making herself. Leo, now almost a year old, crawled on the grass, trying to catch the butterflies that flew among the flowers Jocelyn had planted, especially for the party. "Auntie Dolores, is the cake ready?" Lily asked, running to the woman who had officially become her adoptive grandmother after a legal process that definitively united all the families involved. "It's cooling in the kitchen, my dear," Dolores replied, adjusting Lily's new dress with motherly affection. "Chocolate with strawberry, just like you asked." Robert and Marcia Ross watched the scene with calm smiles. The process of reconnecting with Lily had been gradual and careful, respecting the bonds she had formed during their 2 years of separation. Now she spent half the week with them in Araxa and the other half in Oakhaven with her chosen family. "Daddy Robert," Lily said, running to hug the man she had learned to love again. "Did you bring Gavin?" "I did, Princess. He's inside helping Daddy Arthur set up the sound system for the music." The naturalness with which Lily referred to multiple daddies and mommies had become normal for everyone. Robert and Marcia had understood that trying to erase the bonds their daughter had created would be cruel and counterproductive. Instead, they had embraced the extended family as their own. Gavin Ross, now 10, had initially been confused by the sister who had returned different from the 2-year-old girl he remembered. But Lily's strong and caring personality soon completely won over her older brother. "Sis, come see what I brought for you," he shouted from the porch. Lily ran inside and found Gavin holding a small cage with a yellow canary. "A little bird," she exclaimed, her eyes shining with joy. "Just like the ones I draw. I chose him especially because you always talk about the birds you saw when you lived on the street," Gavin said proudly. "Now you have a bird of your own." Arthur, who had fully recovered from his injuries and was glowing with health, watched the interaction between the siblings with emotion. In recent months, he had undergone a profound transformation. The experience of almost losing Leo had made him completely re-evaluate his priorities. "Is the company doing well?" Robert asked, joining him on the porch. "Better than ever," Arthur replied. After we eliminated all the illegal practices and restructured the business honestly, customers came back with even more confidence. And the most important thing is that I can look at Leo every day knowing I've built something clean to leave for him. Audrey appeared carrying Leo, who had learned to say a few words and insisted on calling Lily Nana, the only way he could pronounce the name of the girl he considered his older sister. "Nana! Nana!" Leo babbled, stretching his little arms out to her. "Hi, my sweet Leo," Lily said, picking him up with the skill of someone who had become an expert older sister. "Want to see my new bird?" Audrey's transformation had been one of the most impressive of the whole story. Intensive therapy and the unconditional support of the family had helped her overcome the traumas of the emotional kidnapping Quentin had exercised over her. Now, she was a dedicated and loving mother, who treated Lily like a daughter and had developed a deep friendship with Marcia. "How are you feeling today?" Marcia asked, watching Audrey with affection. "Happy," Audrey replied simply, "genuinely happy for the first time in years. Look at this," she said, gesturing to the backyard full of running children and adults chatting animatedly. "When I think about what we almost lost because of the greed and revenge of a few people. But we didn't lose it," Jocelyn said, joining the conversation, "and maybe we've gained even more than we had before." Jocelyn had become the emotional center of the extended family. As Leo's older sister and Dolores's official adopted daughter, she bridged all the relationships. She had specialized in pediatrics and now worked at the regional hospital, dedicating herself especially to cases of children in vulnerable situations. "Auntie Jocelyn," Lily called from the other side of the yard, "Leo wants to sing that song you taught him." Everyone gathered around as Leo, in Lily's lap, tried to hum a children's melody that Jocelyn had taught him. It was off-key and broken, but it was music to the ears of everyone who loved him. "This boy is going to be a singer," Robert joked. "Or he'll be like his sister who saves people," Gavin said proudly. "Lily, tell everyone how you saved Leo." "It wasn't just me," Lily said with the modesty she had learned. "It was our whole family together." At that moment, Dolores brought the birthday cake from the kitchen, with 5 lit candles dancing in the gentle afternoon breeze. Everyone sang "Happy Birthday" as Lily closed her eyes to make a wish. "What did you wish for, my dear?" Dolores asked after the candles were blown out. "I wished for our family to never be separated," Lily said with her characteristic seriousness, "and for other lost children to find families who love them like you all love me." The simple and profound wish of a 5-year-old child touched the hearts of everyone present. It was a reminder that behind the extraordinary story they had lived was the universal truth that every child deserves love, protection, and the chance to grow up in safety. Later, as the party began to wind down and the children were tired from playing, everyone sat on the porch to watch the sunset over the Ohio hills. Leo had fallen asleep in Lily's lap, who was softly humming the same melody she used to sing to him in those first difficult days. Gavin was beside her, helping to rock his younger brother, while the adults talked in low tones about plans for the future. "You know what impresses me most about this whole story?" Robert said thoughtfully. "How a 4-year-old girl had the courage to save an unknown baby, risking her own safety." "It wasn't courage," said Lily, who was listening to the conversation. "It was just what had to be done. When you see someone in danger, you help. It's as simple as that." The simplicity of Lily's moral perfectly summed up the lesson everyone had learned during those difficult months. Sometimes, the simplest acts of kindness and courage can change entire lives. Quentin and his associates had been sentenced to long prison terms. The child trafficking ring had been completely dismantled, and several other children had been reunited with their families or placed in loving homes. More importantly, the Ross, Kavanaugh, and Sanchez families had created a support network that extended to other people in the community. Dolores had started a support group for families in difficult situations. Jocelyn volunteered at a children's shelter, and even Audrey had found her calling helping other women who had suffered psychological manipulation. "You know what the most incredible part of this whole story is?" Arthur said, looking at Leo sleeping peacefully in Lily's lap. "What?" several asked at the same time. "It's that it started with an act of desperation, me trying to protect Leo in the worst possible way, and it turned into something beautiful, because good people decided that every child deserves to be protected and loved." As the stars began to appear in the Ohio sky, the extended family said their goodbyes with the promise to meet again the following week, as they always did. Lily would split the next week between her 2 homes, Leo would continue to grow up surrounded by love, and everyone would continue to build a story of overcoming that proved that, even in the most difficult circumstances, love always finds a way. And as Lily fell asleep in her room, whether in Araxa with Robert, Marcia and Gavin, or in Oak Haven with her chosen family, her dreams were no longer about escape or survival on the streets. Now she dreamed of free birds, flying high in the sky, knowing she had finally found her own place to land and call home. If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story, giving it a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.